Welcome to episode 6, everybody. I've got my very special friend, entrepreneur and life coach, Chaz Malewski on deck. Chaz is owner of Rise Above Life Coaching. He's in his 20s, and you're going to find a lot of energy, a lot of spunk, a lot of heart. Chaz is buff on the exterior. He's built, he's worked out, but he has a heart of gold on the interior. And when I first met Chaz, probably 8 or so years ago, he was trying to be a life coach, and I sat there and said, what is a 22-year-old guy going to do to be a life coach? He doesn't have any life experience. He's got nothing. I don't understand. But when you truly get to know Chaz, he's truly a remarkable young man, and as I said, has a heart of gold, loves helping people, and you'll see he loves to dig in and get very specific with people. And I've watched him coach people. I've firewalked with him. I've actually tended a firewalk with him. Truly amazing and remarkable guy, and there's nothing you don't like about Chaz. Super nice and super cool, and we're going to dig in and talk about what's going on with the coronavirus pandemic, how to handle certain things, why are people the way they are, and we're going to talk about, hey, you're in your 20s, how can you be a life coach? So we're going to address that, and we're also going to dig in a little deeper and find out some tools, tips, and tactics on how you can approach things and how you can solve a lot of major problems in your life with very simple strategies and techniques. So on the deck now, Chaz Malewski.
Our world is changing faster and faster. Humans are constantly on the go. Over 70% of people are not happy in some way. They're living in the shadows of fear, especially in their careers and life. Are we humans doomed? I don't think so. And that's where I come in. My name is Joseph Stanley Reichowski, otherwise known as Joe Woo. Each week, I seek to uncover what it takes to truly live your life to the fullest by finding out through interviewing people what were their failures and what did it take for them to reach success. Their stories are truly inspiring, and perhaps they'll inspire you to let go of your fear and live your career and life to the fullest.
All right, everybody. So my special guest this week, Chaz Malewski. Chaz is a life coach, owner of Rise Above Life Coaching. Chaz, what's up, buddy?
Going on, man?
I've been waiting for this one.
Me too.
This is one like where I just really want to get into it, pick your brain, talk about life coaching. Is one of my favorite subjects. You know, you and I go way back, and it's exciting to finally get to talk to you, kind of, and do an interview and see what happens, man.
Absolutely, I know, and it feels like it's been forever too, man.
I know.
Wild how quickly time has passed, but yeah, I appreciate being on and you even.
I know. I was thinking, like, when I first met you, you know, back with the whole Get Life coaching crew, and it was so funny how, like, back then how we were raw and just really starting to grow and learn, and now to see us where we are, we've evolved so much and like changed so much for the better. It's crazy to see this progress. So I was thinking about it, you know, as I was preparing for this interview. I was like, what's it, you know, where do I start, where to go with Chaz and dive in? And I just remember, like, when we first really broke into it. So what did you get into life coaching for? Like, what was your reason to kind of get in there and do it?
So it's actually a really funny story. I was just thinking about this the other day. I got into life coaching on accident. When I was in college, I was learning to open my own gym. That was my goal, because I was a personal trainer and I wanted to open a gym, and I'd wanted to do that since I was like 16. So as I was going through school, I was going through a lot of coaching classes. So it wasn't so much geared towards physical alterations or personal training, anything. It was more about the behavioral aspect of things. And I really enjoyed that content, right? So I had one day where I woke up and I had this, it's that moment of clarity, right? Sometimes it hits you way too early. Well, it's way too late, however it goes. But it's this infinite clarity that I had where I woke up, and I still remember, it was a February morning. I sat up in my bed. It was raining outside, and I was looking out my window, and I had this internal knowing, like, it's that gut feeling that just where you just know, right? I knew I didn't want to open a gym anymore, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. And it, you know, it was like that paralyzing, oh my God, what have I done? You know,
Right.
like
Oh shit moment.
I just wasted 4 years of school. I'm in debt. You know, what
Right.
am I going to do with this now? Like, it's way too late to pivot for something. So what can I do? So I really, like, I was being put through the ringer because I didn't
Yeah.
know what my next move was. And I felt very stuck in that moment. So I was looking into different possibilities. We had health promotion was another option for school, where basically you're just like a spokesperson for health. And I thought maybe that would be cool, but that just meant more schooling. And
Right.
I'm not the traditional school person, right? So for me,
Right.
the idea of doing another year or two of school was like, I would have rather been shot in the kneecaps. So it was not what I wanted.
Gotcha.
So then actually my mom had reached out and she told me that she met this company, and just like you said, right, like Get Life
Yeah.
Coaching, where we got our start. She met this company and she heard about it and heard about life coaching and this and that, and she's selling it to me. She's like, they have this get together, right? This mastermind they do, or this workshop they do, where it's a lunch, you know, a lunch and learn type thing. Like, you should come with me. And yeah, and you remember those
I
lunches,
remember that.
right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Yep, that was my first exposure to it. So
Wow.
so she tells me about it, and it was so funny. I immediately, like, when she told me, I laughed because I thought life coaching was a joke career. I
Right.
heard life coaching. I'm like, you kidding me? Like,
I
Mom,
know.
you're getting scammed. Like, it's a scam. Somebody is playing on your emotions and you're getting scammed.
Right.
So she's like, no, you just got to trust me. You got to come. You got to show up. So when I went there, I remember being there and being super negative about it, and just anticipating it not working out, you know, and just
Right.
wasting my time and all that type of stuff. And as soon as it was over, the first thing in my head was, this is what I'm doing. This is what I need to
Wow.
do. And I need to find a way to do this. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what I have to have. Like, I'm going to find a way to do it. So from that moment, I basically created the first and I think only internship they ever had there,
I remember that.
because I said, like, I need
Yeah.
to find a way to work with you, and
Right.
I can't pay you to do it, but I can pay you in work and I
Right.
can learn, you know?
Right.
So that was my first jump into coaching. And
Wow.
honestly, it's one of those things where in the personal development industry, most people, I would argue, and I can't speak for everybody because I obviously haven't met everybody, but I would argue
Right.
most people get into the personal development industry because they want to become what they need most.
Yeah.
So when they get into that
Big.
field, they learn so much about themselves that by the time they get on that other side, there's no other choice but to give that back.
Right.
Because you know what's possible, right? You see,
Yeah.
it's almost like turning on a light bulb and then seeing the world as it is and knowing you can make an impact with what you've just gone through and what you've learned. So
Yeah.
for me, with coaching and life coaching, when I got into it, my whole mission from all of that was, coming from a personal training background, I would work with these people for an hour. They'd work out, they'd lose some weight, they'd feel good or whatnot, and then they'd gain all their weight back, and they
Yeah.
wouldn't do what I told them to do. And then I would get blamed, and it'd be like, well, it's not me, it's the other
Right.
23 hours that you're not doing what you're supposed to do, right? So my
Right.
driving goal at that point was like, okay, how do I get in these people's heads for 24 hours? Right? Like, how do I help them when I can't be in front of them? And that was into life coaching. That was my avenue of doing that, my vehicle of getting to that point. So that's what got me into it. And then, man, it kind of took on a life of its own after dedicated growth and pushing it forward, and the opportunities that it presented for itself, much more than I ever anticipated it to
I remember
happen.
that. I remember when I first met you too. It was just seeing that growth and the trajectory you went on. Do you feel like, when you kind of just saw the light bulb go off? I mean, what was that like? Was it just the experience of being with a group of people? Because I remember those things, like the lunch and learns and some of the sessions. Was it just that whole togetherness, or was it just something that stuck out that you said, damn, this is it? Like, in the light.
Yeah, you know what? It was something that he said as soon as he walked in.
Yeah.
He comes in, and I don't know if you do names on your show or whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Joe walks in.
Yep.
And he's talking and I'm kind of vibing with what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that stuck out to me, and this is something I tell my clients all the time, is that, like, you might not take 95% of the things that I say to you. It might go in one ear and out the other.
Yep.
Anything we talk about, but there's going to be 5% of this conversation that, if you use it, completely different life.
Yep.
Right? So for me, that sentence, literally, it was one sentence that he said that got me into it. He said, you're exactly where you are right now because you choose to be.
Yep.
And for me, that was the light bulb explosion moment of, like it was almost like I was given permission to make a choice.
Right.
Right. Like I didn't know I was waiting on that, but I was. And it finally got to this point where it was like, you know what, you're right. Like everything I do from now on is my choice. I can choose what I do from here. And that's what blew up for me. And as it grew and as I got into more social circles and stuff, it made it harder to just be with people or be around people that were in a different mindset, because I'm now in this moment where like I'm so growth focused, I'm growth oriented, and I have people that they would rather hold on to the problems that they have than risk getting better ones, you know? And for me, that was always such a ridiculous concept. I was like, really? Like you want to live paycheck to paycheck for the next 20 years without attempting to change that? That's what you want to do? You know, it was always crazy for how that was. Or like you want to stay in a specific life situation because of other people, you know? And it's like, well, at the end of the day, like what if those people leave and it's 20 years down the line?
Right.
You know, or 10 years down the line, then you just lost all this time for people that just left you. So where are we, you know, why are we even having this conversation? It was just such a momentum shift and a mindset shift for me of like, there's so much more opportunity and possibility out there if you're willing to go after it, but you have to actually be willing to do that.
Right. I agree. Totally. Yeah. And, you know, the one thing that I always say, like, I remember when I first met you, man, this guy's young. And even like me, I did that judgmental thing at first. I'm like, okay, he's like 22 or something. Like, he's like, he wants to be a life coach. Like, why would, you know, and then it like hit me as I got to know you. I was like, wow, this guy's really good. We took some trips up to New York, did some firewalking. And I just kind of like watching and marveling how you worked with people and how you were and how you were committed to it. But what do you say to people? So if somebody wants to hire you, you're like, hey, I'm going to hire this life coach. He's still a young guy. Like, what do you say to those critics about that?
Yeah. So I love that you are asking this question, because I actually just did a post on this yesterday.
Nice.
It's one of my favorite stories because it really is it was the defining moment. Like, yes, I had that sentence that was said to me that like kind of shifted my mindset, but this was the moment where I truly like took responsibility for everything that what I was going to bring to the world and what I was going to put out there. I was at a networking event, and I was the youngest person at the networking event by probably 15, 20 years. Like I was way young, and I was nervous as all hell. Right. And it was so hot outside, and I'm like dressed to the nines, and it was an outdoor event. It's the middle of summer, and I'm dressed like I was wearing a black button up shirt, these really nice pants, like dress pants, black shoes, all this type of stuff. And I show up and everyone's wearing like Hawaiian shirts or just dressed down. You're like, I looked completely out of place. Plus now I'm soaking in sweat, and I'm like, all right, well, this is going to go horribly, but I'm going to go for it. Right. Whatever. Sure. Like I'm going to let these people know I'm here. So the first group I approached, it was these three guys. They were insurance agents, and they look super successful. They look super confident, all that type of stuff. So I pretended to be as confident as I possibly could. And I had just gotten certified as a coach, maybe a couple weeks prior. Right. Like I hadn't been in this for a long time.
Right.
So I walk up to them and I introduced myself, and they told me what they did. And then they asked what I did. And I told them I'm a life coach. And I'll never forget this, man. It almost ended me in that one quick moment. They all at the same time looked at each other and they started laughing. And I was like, didn't want that. Wasn't expecting that.
Right.
And then the one guy asked me, he said, how old are you? I said, I'm 22. And he said, 22. What exactly do you know about life?
Wow.
And for me, that was like, it was this soul crushing moment of like, oh no, like, can I not have my dream?
Right.
And so, I walk away from that conversation totally defeated. I was getting ready to just leave and go home, because I'm like, well, I failed already. It's not even going to be good. Well, I sat down, and this guy comes up to the table I was sitting at. I had my head down. I wasn't confident at all. He comes up, he introduces himself to me, and he sits down. And he asked me what I did. And I just told him kind of like half-heartedly what I did. And I wasn't enthusiastic about it because I was expecting rejection really quickly. Well, he lit up really quick. He's like, that sounds really cool. Like, why aren't you excited about that? And then I told him, about what my experience, but then I told him about all my insecurities that I had about it. I told him about my age and this and that, because that was something that was always in my head, was like, I am very young here, and I've never met anyone my age that's in this field, that's broken out to this point. And if you look at any social media, anything, anywhere, all the older guys, and I know Gary Vee does it all the time, rips he always says 25-year-old life coaches, rips
I
on them,
know.
right? And I always had this anchor of like, yeah, dude, but that's because you're meeting the bad ones. Like you're not meeting the ones that are good at their
Right.
job, right?
Right.
So, and there are a lot. I will be the first to say there are a lot of young people that have no idea what the hell they're doing.
Right. Right.
But I remember I'm telling him all this and I'm just droning on and going and going and going. And he slams the table and it like really just, shook me up. And he looks me dead in the eye and it's super serious, slams the table, looks at me. And he said, it doesn't matter how old you are. What matters is how good you are. And for me, it was like in that moment, that was the first time somebody had shifted the way my thought was.
Right.
And then he just kept staring at me. He said, promise me from this moment on, you'll be so good that even you believe it.
Wow.
And for me, that was like, you know what? Yep, you're right. Like you are absolutely right. And I committed from that moment on. I was like, no matter what happens, no matter what goes on in my life, if this is the career that I'm choosing for me and my client's sake, I'm going to commit to being better every single day at my craft and what I do. And so that's what drove me to really do it and get past that whole age objection that a lot of people gave me, because that wasn't the first time I got it, right? Like I got it many times after that. And my response always was, are you afraid that someone younger than you is going to teach you how to live?
Yep. Oh, I love that, man. I love that.
For me, it was always about like life coaching is not about my life. If life coaching were about my life, I'd be horrible at my job because I don't have a lot of value to give. I don't have a lot to put out there that my life would say something for experience, especially if we're going toe to toe with experience.
Sure.
Like you probably have so much more experience than I do in many other areas, right? So if we're playing that game, I'm going to lose every time.
Yeah.
The whole point of coaching is about your life. It's about the other person's life. And it's about the things that they are either avoiding, ignoring, or just too afraid of taking on head on, or maybe they can't even see it in the first place. Right. That's the stuff. I work in the blind spots, right? I'm that passenger in the car that checks to make sure you can switch lanes.
Right.
So it's not so much about me. And that's what I had to get over, was that my age and all that, I was making it about me. I wasn't making it about the other person or what I could do for them. It was all that. And plus there's a truth to people only work with surface level information if that's all they have. Right. So for me, if all you know about me is that I'm a life coach and I'm 22, that's all you have. You don't know anything about my experience, my abilities, I can do. That's all you have. But that's not your fault that that's all you're working with. That's all I've given you. Right. So, from that moment on, it was like, okay, you got to prove yourself from the jump. Number one, as soon as that question hits or that objection happens, establish it. Yeah. And that's where, for handling that for me and getting over that, that was the real big switch for me.
Yeah. No, and I remember that too. I remember one of the first times I watched you come on stage or watched you in a group setting. And I remember calling our friend Dennis and I said, I was like completely wrong. And I just had that surface level info. And I'm like, this guy is damn good. I'm like, he was so good with people, answering questions. And what I thought was like, like the listening, that you had, like listening really intent and just being so genuine. And it was so cool to see. And like totally changed, my perspective on things. It was really cool. That's good for you, man. That's awesome. You talked about like, people with surface level stuff. And I think that's a lot of what's going on in society today. So many people that are unhappy. You see depression rampant in the world. And when I was in corporate and I'd be traveling, I felt like everybody has this zombie mentality, just out there unhappy, depressed. Even before the pandemic, it was kind of rampant up. What's your sort of take on all that going on?
Well, I on the whole, I mean, and especially within the past year, right?
Yeah.
So many people have been so distracted for so long with just, I mean, honestly, things have been good, for a good amount of people. And last year was the first year in a good amount of time, I'd say since probably recession times, or maybe a little bit after that, where we really had that gut check of like, what are you made of? Like now we have adversity. Now we have toughness. Now we have things that are happening in your life that it's now forcing you to get uncomfortable. How do you respond to your life? And I mean, it's very evident. The people that responded to the events that were happening in a positive way, they responded in a way that was like, how do I take what's happening now, not try to change the things I can't change.
Right.
How do I take this moment of time and how do I use it to my advantage? Those people right now are thriving.
Yep.
I mean, thriving. Everything could get locked down again right now and they'll be fine. Guarantee it, right?
Figured it out.
Exactly. It's the people that became victims. And I
Yeah.
won't say, because there is a fine line. Like some people, some things that happen to some people, absolutely horrible. They had no control over it.
Sure.
And yes, terrible stuff happens. But there's also this giant group of people that are sinking into these things: depression, anxiety, frustration, all of this stuff.
Right.
But they're doing the same things every single day. They're
Yeah.
not changing the way that they approach their life. They're not changing the way they respond to their life. They're letting everything dictate what they do next. And I mean, I can't tell you the amount of people that I see online.
I know.
That as soon as a new news update happens, immediately they go to overwhelm, right? Or they go to anxiety. And that's the first thing that happens. Meanwhile, they're only working with one little piece of information, but they've made that their home, right? Every time something happens that goes against their level of comfortability, they have to find a way to rally against it and create stress in their life. When in reality, it's like, these are things that are so far outside of your control. How about you ask yourself, okay, this is happening. What can I do to improve my life?
Right.
Or instead of that, if you're still distracting yourself, because a lot of people are doing that as well, or self-medicating or avoiding pains or doing all of these things, what are you avoiding right now that if you addressed it or you took it head on would change something in your life? Because everybody has something. Everybody has at least one thing that they avoid, or they consciously try to do other things before they get to that one.
Right.
It's like that laundry list of things to do,
exactly.
that stack stuff on top of it, because that's the stuff that's painful. That one thing to address, right? And that's why I'm in business, right? I deal with that painful part.
Exactly.
But a lot of people avoid it because it sucks. I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like, it sucks when you got to go there, when you got to go in the depths, and sometimes you got to admit you're wrong. Sometimes you got to admit you're the problem, and that's not easy to do.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting, and you just say it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head too. And people have that small piece of information. So, what do you do in that case? I mean, when you say to people, "Hey, look, do you just really dive deep into questions and try to get them out of that apathy and say, look, it's only one piece," or what are you thinking about, with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's as it's case by case, right? It's situational. But a lot of times the easiest way to get to that is, of everything that's going on, right? Let's say you get really stressed out. There's a news update. There's something that happens by, I don't know, the political climate in the last year was ridiculous. So let's say that you're one of those people that you cut off all your friends and family because they had a different political view for you, right? Now that all that's over, how's that working out for you?
Yeah.
Would you rather hold on to the fact that you cut all these people off and you were right? Sure, you can call yourself right. I don't care.
Yeah.
Would you rather never speak to them again or burn that bridge for good? Or would you rather work to build that back up in a new way? Would you rather build that relationship in a way that serves you better in your situation? Whereas maybe you don't talk about politics. Maybe you don't invest so heavy in that mindset about that, and that's ultimately, it's the meaning you give it, right? And this.
Yep.
And that's what keeps a lot of people so frustrated, is they give these things meanings that they don't know that they're true. They're just creating that meaning.
Right.
And so, I mean, if we really dive into it, like, think of the meaning of a car crash. It's literally, on the surface, a car crash is two vehicles colliding together. That's a car crash, right?
Yeah.
If your wife is in one of those cars, the meaning to you is significantly different.
Yep.
Right? Same thing with everything else that's going on right now, is that everybody's making things so personal, when in reality, all you're doing is putting yourself into the victim seat. And the more you become a victim, the less power you have to control anything that's going on in your life. You'll always be looking for that opportunity to blame someone and say, see, it's their fault. Right. It's not mine.
Yeah. And that's what was, I guess with the pandemic, on one hand, I reflected on last year and said, it really exposed a lot of people to a lot of the fears and insecurities they had, because all these people, had all this fear, and I saw the victimization, and, oh, well, even like, oh, it's rained for 5 days in a row. I guess we have no sun. And I'm like, wow, like, the most positive person did that. So you think it's just a lot of this deep rooted fear that these people have in themselves that's kind of coming out, and they're just blaming the victims, or is that really like at the root of all this?
Well, I think being locked inside and having to stay at that, that we're missing out on that social interaction, but ultimately, on top of it, we're forced to sit at home with our demons.
Yeah.
And prior to anything like this, we never had to. We could go to work and just go into autopilot zombie mode.
Yeah,
We could
exactly.
just run through the motions and ignore the stuff that, we know we're overweight. We know we got to take care of ourselves. We know we have high blood pressure. We
Right.
know that the stress is causing us to lose years of our life because we're not sleeping. We're anxious all the time. We're getting so angry at the things we can't control.
Right.
But when we can go into a routine or we can go into our habits, well, that's okay. We'll get to that
Yeah.
stuff later, right? Like I'll do it on Monday. We love
Right.
that one. Do it on Monday. Great.
Yeah.
So when people are stuck inside and they have to actually sit there and say, well, I don't have as many distractions as I did before,
Right.
that's when the stuff comes up, right? Then it's like, oh, now I actually have to examine this. And that's painful. Like,
Oh
that
gosh,
hurts.
yeah.
That hurts to have to sit in that. So you see a lot of people that, I mean, what was it? I think the overdose rate like quadrupled in the
Yeah.
past year or something.
Yep.
Because those painful realities were just too hard to handle. And it's horrible. That's a terrible, awful
Oh
thing.
gosh, yeah.
But it's really shown a light on the lack of mental health awareness and or
Big.
education that happens in this country. I
Yeah.
mean, and really any country, all countries around there, it's more so based on how to get ahead
Right.
than how to get out of your head. Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I like that.
that's really where we're at. That's the
Right.
state that we're in. And unfortunately, it's sad to see it's still happening daily.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that just can't navigate this messy piece that we're all stuck in right now.
Oh, I know. And then the thing that I've noticed too is this sort of immediate gratification, and I know with technology, it's sped things up and things are available. I mean, you go on your phone, you get something right away, you get information, access to it. But I just feel like there's a deep rooted problem there with so many people. It's like if something doesn't go their way, it doesn't happen right away. They get so pissed off, they get so upset with it. And it's like, oh, it didn't happen. I see it with my kids sometimes, like they don't get an award or they don't get the routine down right, like my son with his taekwondo. So, how do we teach people like, hey, sometimes instant gratification, it's not always going to work. It's not always healthy.
Put your phone down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, but it's true. It's one of those things where you become your environment. And that doesn't just mean like where you physically live or where you are or anything along those lines. It's the environment that you put into your head. So if you're scrolling on your phone for 10 hours a day and the majority of the things that you're reading are negative or hateful or just disencouraging. I don't even know if that's a word. Is that a word? Disencouraging?
Probably. Yeah, right. We made
or not
word.
encouraging. We'll say not encouraging.
Right.
I know that's two words. All right. So we'll use that. So if it's just not encouraging to you, well, what do you think you're going to think about after you spend all of that time doing that?
Right.
Like if we put it this way, your son with Taekwondo, if he spent an hour worrying about breaking a board, right?
Right.
Chances are when he goes to break that board, he's going to approach it with hesitation. He's going to approach it with fear. He's going to doubt himself, all of those things. If he spent that hour focusing on how to break the board, most likely what would happen is he would go up to that board. He would run it through his head again because he's been thinking about exactly how to do it. And he would do it exactly as he's been rehearsing. And he'd probably have a much bigger, greater chance of success.
Yeah.
The instant gratification thing is that we don't want to go through that hour period of having to focus or having to navigate the negative and the positive and pick which one we want to focus on. Right. Like we want at this moment, we want to know that we're good enough. We want to know that we have enough that we need. And we want to just calm that ability to just say, yeah, you know what? Everything's fine. Everything's going to be great. Like also Amazon has ruined patience, right? Because we can get anything we want now. I can get something overnighted to me.
I know. The next day.
Like it's crazy. It's insane. So we're constantly in a culture that's breeding us for instant gratification. And it's almost harder. It's harder to train yourself to be patient nowadays than it is to teach yourself how to get what you want immediately. And I think what it's doing is it's ruining the culture of practice.
Yeah. I agree. And I think you're absolutely right, because it's like, it was funny that you bring up Amazon, because I'm like, hey, my order's not here. I'm tracking it. Why is it not here? And I'm like, where's that? And it's like that gratification of, wait a second, a couple of years ago, we didn't have this, but I do see that with a lot of young kids. It's like when they do these TikTok videos or they do their dance routines or whatever it is, and they just get so upset so quickly that they just like, all right, I want to do it anymore. And I'm like, I don't remember doing that. Like as a kid, it's like I get upset, but I keep going. I go back the next day and just keep doing it. And I like how you put, a post the other day, the number one thing to do is keep doing it. So, what's your advice then to people like, just keep going and going, but like, people get that fear, they get that instant gratification. It's just this whole big mess, how do you get people to keep going and going, and eventually you have that breakthrough once you put in the hard work?
Yeah. That's kind of been like a central thesis of what I do and how I work with people is like, if you want to
Right.
get good at something, the literal only way to get good at doing something is I can't go to the gym and lose weight if I go one day.
Right.
I can't. It's literally physically impossible. That is an impossibility. It does not work that way, right?
Right.
I have to keep going. I got to keep doing it. That law extends to almost everything else in life. But the problem becomes we're being taught that, you know, you're already good enough to have what you want. You just have to go out there and do it. And so we put these thoughts into people's head, like you don't really have to work for it. You already have it. Just go ahead and just try something. It's going to work. It's going to happen. And then when you hit that first moment of it not working, you think that you're the problem.
Right.
Because that's what you're expecting, right? You're expecting to be able to do something 1 or 2 times and then it works. Great. I followed the instructions. It's wonderful. I did it. You know, but a lot of people, they don't want to go through that time period of having to learn and fail. And failure is the ultimate, we'll say metric, right? To know whether or not somebody's going to be successful in something is how high is your failure tolerance?
Right.
Are you willing to go out until you win? Are you? Because if you're not, chances are you're going to give up way before you learn the lesson you need to learn.
Right.
Because a lot of times when you go into something, you know this very well, you know, when you go into something as a brand new beginner, it's impossible to assume that you know the same level of information that an expert in the field knows.
Yep, exactly.
It's impossible to think that, but we assume just because we're doing something or we're getting into something that we should be ready for it. And then when we're not, we just think of ourselves as failure. And then we're not, you know, we're not cut out for this.
Yeah.
It's like the guy who's been doing this for 20 years. You know how many times this guy's failed? You know how many times this guy has had to get back up and try again? Yeah. Ultimately, it's that instant gratification has, like I said, it's ruined the practice of practice, right? It's ruined that just procedural learning. I'm currently I'm doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Nice.
I am a 2-stripe white belt. It's taken me a year and a half to get 2 stripes on a white belt.
Wow.
A year and a half, right? That's a year and a half. How is your show with language?
Oh, it's perfect. Bring it on.
Right. That's a year and a half of me getting my ass kicked daily, right? Like when I go there, I don't win. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't go there to win. I go there to learn.
Right.
You know, and the only way I learn is by knowing what I did wrong and then improving that.
Yeah.
If I was already great at everything that I did, if I could just go in there and know exactly what I needed to do, there would be no point in learning. There'd be no point in any of that, right? Like, and there's no reward in that. Same thing with business. You know, if I were to grow my coaching business, if I were to just come into it, put one post up on Facebook and get a full book list of clients, I don't learn the process. Right. I just learn, okay, cool. Like these people want to work with me. That's great. So when adversity finally hits me and these people don't just magically sign up, then I think I'm the problem. Well, it's worked before.
Yeah.
You know, why isn't it working again? It's because I'm not practicing. I'm not learning these lessons I need to know. And most people, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They're not doing enough repetition of the thing that gives them the fulfillment or might bring them fulfillment to even know that that's what they want. You know, there is a caveat to my theory here, right? Like if you truly know deep down that something is not right for you, do not keep doing it. That is like, that's the caveat, right? And you'll know, trust your instincts, trust your gut, all that. But on the whole here, like by and large, most people stop way before they even know whether or not it's something they want to be a part of. And you see this a lot too. I mean, I'm about to get married in this year, right?
Right.
And the divorce rate in this country isn't exactly encouraging me to get married. Right? Like we're up above 50%, I think, right?
Yeah, 56% or something. It's like, holy crap.
It's insane. Yeah. But if you look at the statistics, it's marriages are failing within the first 5 years or the first 10 years of that marriage or whatever that might be, right?
Right.
Because that's when the adversity hits. That's when the kids grow up and they're monsters. Right? Like that's when it's hard. That's when you have to learn, like, how do we make this work? You know, that's when you see the ugly side of each other and you have to work through that. You don't run from that. And that I'm just using that as an example. Obviously, obviously there are exceptions to the rule and there are some horrible relationships that shouldn't happen. Sure. But that doesn't prove the rule. So it's just showing up in so many areas of society right now that people give up too quickly.
Yeah.
And they
No,
don't
exactly.
they don't test themselves enough to see what they're made of and if they can even make it on the other side, which unfortunately, and I see this all the time in my business, unfortunately, this does a massive, massive amount of damage to somebody's self-worth and their confidence,
Oh, yeah.
because they don't know that they can actually overcome something. They just know that they quit and they know that they ran away.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing. And it's like, I got a perfect example of just me, like getting the show going. Like I started this process, thought process this time last year. Is like, I want to do something. Really want to do something cool. And then I got stuck in my head again and I coached myself out of it. But I'm like, how do I know if this is going to work or not? I'm like, I want it to work. And all those things came in my head. I'm like, wait a second, this is something you got to do. Just put it out there and see what happens, tweak it, see if it works. And you got to give it time. And, I was like, I'll just do a couple. I was like, no, I got to do like 100 of these. Let's see what happens. And I love talking to people and interviewing people. And then once I just sort of put the pedal to the metal on this thing, it just all of a sudden started taking off. I was like, wow, this is fun. This is cool. And I'm even tweaking stuff, adding new things already. And it's like, I was like thinking, all right, I'm gonna have the instant gratification, something's gonna work, I'm gonna get all these great people. And it didn't. The first couple, it was like, wow, I only got like 60 views on it. And then like my kids were like, wow, I got like 200 new subscribers today. And just like, oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
then it just hit me. I'm like, it's a work in progress. And I'm failing on stuff to try to learn it and grow. And yeah, it's painful. And you're just like, I don't want to do it. But like, I just wish people would kind of, see that more.
Right. Well, and I mean, honestly, man, you're a true testament to that theory, because
Yeah.
I remember when you started out with all of this, and I
Yeah.
remember your original mission of what you were trying for, and I remember what you were doing. And all the way back then, you didn't know what it was going to blow up into. You didn't know what it
Right.
was going to grow to. And you did hit some down times. And I
Yeah.
remember it being a struggle for you.
Yeah.
But because you kept doing it and you kept working on it, right? And you
Right.
kept developing it, we're having this conversation right now. And it's
Yeah.
just like, it's living proof of this is what happens when you don't quit, when you don't
Right.
give up. You find your way, and it gets easier. I feel like that's the missing
That's it.
piece that people don't really focus on, is like, after you go through that initial tough period, it gets so much easier because you
Right.
know
You
how
have
to
a lot of
respond.
clarity. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You have a lot of clarity. And sure, you're going to hit when you start growing a business, you're going to have bigger problems. You're going to have bigger things that come at you. And then that's when people are like, oh, this is it, I'm going to stop. And I'm like, I've had issues where, you had guests like at the last minute say, hey, can't do this. This is not going to work. Or, oh, you don't have enough followers. And I'm like, damn, that's just slap in the face. I'm like, all right, I just keep going. I'll find it and I get somebody else. And then eventually I'm going back to that person and I'm going to get them and say, hey, here you go. Let's get it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So question for you too. So, I've been hearing this a lot lately too, and maybe it's pandemic driven, but people have just been saying, I'm stuck in a rut all the time, like, or I'm just not sure what to do. I mean, and I said to somebody, I don't think you're really stuck. I just think you're just really not sure what your next step is, or you're afraid. Do you see that a lot too when people say that, and how do you get them out of that?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the first thing that I hear every time I have a session with a new client is,
Yeah.
I'm stuck, or
Right.
this is where I'm stuck at, or something. Most of the time, the reason somebody's stuck is not because they don't have opportunity, or it's not because they don't know what it lies ahead of them, right? They always say, I don't know what to do, or tell me what to do. That, if I could pick one sentence I wish I could erase from anybody's mind, is tell me what to do. Because you don't learn anything that way, right?
Yeah.
But in that case, say somebody says they're stuck. Most of the time, they're stuck because there's something they're not willing to do.
Right.
And a lot of times they're stuck because they have to choose pain. They have to choose some form of pain. So I get a lot of people that are stuck in the sense of, they're in a job they hate. They're in a relationship that's not giving them fulfillment.
Right.
They've been doing the same things over and over their whole life, and they just don't know how to get out of it, this and that. The answer is painfully simple for most people. Literally, it'll take you 5 minutes to close your eyes and think about the stuff in your life that makes you miserable. Start there.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best I can tell you right now.
Yeah.
If I'm not coaching you, start there. That's the stuff that keeps you stuck. Because when you address those things and you overcome those things, then you start to see this wide open door of opportunity and the possibilities that lie ahead of you. See, most people, it's not for lack of opportunity, because you can create opportunity out of nowhere. Most people, it's not that. It's the fear of taking that risk, because there is an inherent risk in making a change, right? There is a risk of loss. You're probably going to have to sacrifice something, whether it's time, money, energy. You might have to break out of a certain friendship or a relationship you're in, change your environment. You know, you may have been doing the same thing for 30 years and it's not been bringing you any fulfillment, but it's all you know what to do. You might have to jump out of the plane and find the parachute on the way down. Right. And that's tough. That's very, very scary.
Yeah.
But what's worse?
Right.
Laying in your deathbed thinking I should have tried.
Yeah. That's,
you know,
huge.
When you learn that lesson, that's truly the last time you'll learn that lesson, because then it's too late, right? Then you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. So that's big, man. Yeah. Wow. That's powerful when you think about it, you know, because I get a lot of people who will come to me and say, well, I'm just afraid to do this, afraid to do that. And I kind of start and say, okay, if you were kind of dying or you knew you only had, you know, weeks to live, what would you do? And the immediate shift is I do everything I can. I'm like, then why not do it now? You don't know how much time you have. You could be hit by a bus tomorrow. You could, you know, not wake up. And, you know, and that, like, for me, like, I use that, like, kind of the pain of that, or just that feeling. It's just like, okay, if I don't do this, you know, what's going to happen? You know, my kids aren't going to benefit from this. I'm not going to create a lot of abundance and things like that. So those are some of the negative things I use to kind of twist into a positive, and it's worked really well.
Yeah. And another thing to add to that, I believe as well, is a lot of people fight for the negatives in their life.
Yeah.
And they fight to keep them because they don't know life outside of it. Right. And they tell themselves these convenient little lies like, well, it's not as bad as it was. Right. Or I've been worse. You know, he only hits me when he drinks, and he said he stopped drinking. You know, we convince ourselves of these things so that we don't have to make those tough decisions. So we don't have to embrace that difficult moment where it's like, nah, no one's coming to save you except you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And it's kind of like, you know, that soft, tough love, you know, I mean, and what I like too is, you know, with your book, This Isn't Therapy, that's really what it is. It's tough love approach to living a better life. So what made you write a book, and what's the book all about? I'm curious on it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, and I know I'm behind a little bit, but I'm
you're good. I got to send you a copy still.
Yeah.
It's on my to-do list.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I started writing the book 2 years ago. And the reason I started writing the book was actually, it was inspired by a post that I saw on Reddit. You know Reddit?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I saw a post on Reddit. Some guy had been to therapy 14 times. He'd seen 14 different therapists. And everything he was writing in his post about why therapy didn't work wasn't necessarily because of the therapist, right? It was because it wasn't addressing the real root issues of what was going on with this dude. And what was really the root issue was that nobody's telling this guy straight that he's the problem.
Right.
That he's the one that needs to change, right? That he's the one that does there. 95%, I would say, if I had to make a rough estimate, 95% of my clients have seen a minimum of 2 therapists before they come and talk to me.
Wow.
A minimum of 2, which really doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're putting stock into therapy to be something that helps you, and that first therapist does not help you, it puts a negative spin on therapy in your head.
Sure.
But on top of that, you go into your second therapist already assuming it's not going to work.
Right.
So a lot of times people go in with the mindset, well, this isn't going to work. And therapy takes a really long time.
Yeah.
And we're going back into instant gratification, right? And I mean, I've had my own experiences with therapy and all this. And I mean, you can look up research, however you want to do it. It's not as effective as it gets promoted. But I have nothing against therapists. That's another thing, right? Like, there are very good therapists that are out there, and I will not deny. I mean, therapy's been around for hundreds of years.
Oh, yeah.
It obviously works, right? But it just doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for my clients. It never has. So for me, my book, it's meant to be so direct and approach the things that you're doing right now in your life that are keeping you where you are. Maybe they're keeping you stuck, right? They're keeping you frustrated. It's not sugarcoating around it, saying like, well, maybe we can get to this point, you know, or maybe try doing something like this. It's like, no, dude, this is the bullshit that you're sucking down every day, over and over and over again. That's keeping you where you are. You either address it now or you don't, but you have to live with that decision. And if you're not going to address it, and you're not going to work on it, then stop complaining about your life because you're choosing it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
And so the whole point of the book, is to make you mad. It's like legitimately.
Oh,
I
I
wrote
like
the
that.
book. I wrote the book from a perspective of I want this to irritate as many people as possible.
Right.
Not in the sense of like, oh, this guy, what's he talking about? I
Yeah.
want it to irritate them in the sense that when they read it, they can't ignore it.
Right.
I want it to plant that seed, that bug in their head that like everything in this is exactly what's happening to me. And now that I know it, like it's almost like I've turned my mind on to seeing it. Now
Right.
I have to make a decision.
Right.
I've read so many personal development books in my
Mhm.
course of however. And over the summer, I started reading again. I took kind of a break for a little bit, but I started
Yeah.
reading personal development books again. And my fiance did as well. Well, she was getting books from all the big name people, right? Like the
Right.
classics.
Yeah.
And the classics absolutely have their place. But then she
Yeah.
was getting more newer books, books that are coming out nowadays from
Right.
all of these motivational people or life coaches or however that might be. And I asked her one day, I said, because this is when I was in the peak of like finishing my book. I asked her, I said, hey, what was that book about? And she told me. And then I said, well, what was that other book about? And she said, it's like the same thing. I said,
Wow.
well, how about that one? The third one that you have there. Well, it's kind of the same. And I said, well, of all three of those books, which one did you like the most? And she couldn't give me an answer.
Wow.
And for me, that was the moment of like all of these books, all they're doing is repeating the same information or similar information over and over and over again that's not leaving an impact on the person that's reading.
Right.
And sure, if it's somebody's first time into personal development, they pick that up and they look at it, it's probably going to have a big impact on them.
Yeah.
No doubt. That's why these things become bestsellers, right?
Right.
But my whole approach to doing this was I wanted to write this book and make it the last personal development book you ever need to read.
I like that.
Because everything inside of it is going to answer your question and it's going to show you the path forward of where you need to go. And I say this because every lesson in the book is 7 years of coaching people.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah,
what I put in
exactly.
there was these are all the core themes of the reasons why
Right.
people stay stuck.
Right.
And it's not something you're going to find if you go let's say you go, that's why I called it This Isn't Therapy, because you will not get this approach. And I can't speak for every therapist. So you might,
Sure. Right.
but
Yeah.
most likely you're not going to get an approach like this if you go to somebody that's just going to sit there and listen to you. This is a much more active, no, you're going to listen to this and you're going to take action on it, because if you don't, here's the alternative.
Right. And it scares me too, because you bring up a good point about, people in their life to life decisions. Like, it's your choice. You have a choice. Sure, things happen to you, but it's your choice to make, of that experience. Sure, you might have a traumatic experience and you might need some coaching and help to kind of get out of that. But like, what you're doing right now is basically setting your life up for whatever you want by, avoiding some things or doing things and growing. And it's amazing to see how people aren't making the right choices. But what I like about you the most this past, like, I would say it's at least a good year and a half or so. Like, this massive shift. I wish everybody would see it. And, there's part of me that was thinking today before the interview, was like, I would have loved to see this documented, because like, I think you're like me, like we had those experiences where we got stuck, we kind of put things down a little bit and sort of walked away and came back. And then it was just like, and I was saying this to a couple of my friends, I'm like, Chaz just went like, like this, like straight up, and he has never looked back. And it's amazing. So walk me through what kind of happened. Like, you just, like, again, like the light bulb went off and you just had this amazing success I've seen.
Yeah. So it definitely came in waves at first. And I always wanted to really take off with it and do as much as I could. For me, I think I was always waiting on somebody, some approval somewhere, somebody to say like, nope, you're ready. You can do it. Now it's your time.
Right.
And I got it in probably the best way possible. I was in tandem with coaching. I was working with a fitness company, fitness franchise, and I helped grow the company from roughly 8 gyms to I don't want to get the number wrong, but I believe it was 29.
Wow.
It was around 29 in a year's time frame.
Wow.
We took the company from where it was. I think we grew it by like little over 1 million in a year.
Right.
And I put in blood, sweat, tears. And this was just a small little local company, at the start. And I mean, it kind of stretched the East Coast, but what ended up happening was I put so much energy and effort and all of this stuff into it, and was losing sleep over it, so stressed, miserable. I was still coaching on the, the other
Sure.
side of things, and I still had my business, but it was really just to have it, because I never wanted to quit coaching. I loved coaching.
Yeah.
And that's what I did when I started with this company. Was I was a trainer for them, but I also did coaching within the gym, because I know how valuable it is. And so when I eventually worked my way up, I was director of sales and marketing for the company. And when Corona hit, and COVID came through, it obviously did a number. But
Yeah.
I was told that my pay was going to be cut 33%.
Wow.
And I was expected to work the same amount of time, possibly more, if needed, right? Because we needed to keep the business afloat. And the only guarantee I was given was, if we make it out of this afterwards, we'll take care of you, right? Like that was the mindset of it. So I had a real deep realization moment where it was like, do you want to sacrifice the thing that you always have been wanting to build and grow? Do you want to sacrifice that for this company, where obviously they could care less about you and your time and your energy? Because, by the way, that 33% pay cut, when I did my budget, I was negative $52 every month.
Wow.
With all my bills and everything. So I was going to kill myself to work for this dude and then not make money. Right. Yeah. So for me, this is the best time and the worst time to completely cash in on your business, to grow your coaching, to do the thing that really lights you up and fulfills you. And the thing that people have been telling you for years, just do this thing, like go into it. So honestly, man, I quit my job like 2 days after we had that conversation. With no safety net, no plan B. And I've never been one to have a contingency plan. It's just not how I operate. Like I'm a person who will define my own success, and that's how I've always lived. So with coaching, what it was for me, it was like, you're either going to do this now or you're never going to do it. And so when I got, when I quit and I just went all in on the business, I just made a declaration to myself. I was like, no matter what happens, you're going to find a way to succeed. You'll figure it out, and it'll grow, is the way it is. And I've been so fortunate over the past year. And I mean, in my whole career of coaching, really the 7 years I've been doing it, but I've been so fortunate in the past year to meet so many people that have helped me grow, and have encouraged me. And you're one of them as well, that have just helped push me to that point where you really do make an impact. You make a difference. And had I never taken that, I can't imagine the people that would have missed out on what they have now. I have so many cool success stories in the past year alone of people that when they came to me, I mean, I have some people that they're right there. They're on the edge, it was close, but they're amazing. I see them online now, and they have all these fulfilling, happy lives now. And it's beautiful. So cool to see it, because it's not me, it's not, yes. Do I help them get there? Sure. But it's not me that does it. It's them. Right. And that's the beauty of it. And I get so much more fulfillment out of what I do now than what I ever did before. That's what drives me to grow the company. So every decision I make is based on, how do I help more people? What do I have to do to help more people? Who can I leverage to help more people? Like, who can I work with and partner with and associate myself with, so I get more exposure, so I can help more people? Because that's what drives it. So honestly, to answer, what's caused the growth, it's that mindset of like, stop thinking about me, think about them.
Right. That is awesome, man. So as we get ready to wrap this up here, and I know this is always a loaded question I love to ask people. So, like, what would be one piece of advice you could give to somebody to create change right now? Like, what's one simple thing? I know there's a lot out there, but if you said, okay, do this one thing, this will help catapult you, kind of like you've had the success over the last year, like, what would that be?
That's a great one.
And that's a lot.
Yeah. Give me a second, because
take your time, man. Take your time.
I want to make this good for anybody that listens to it. So the one thing to do, if you're trying to make a change, if you're looking to do something, accept complete 100% responsibility for your life.
Oh, love it. Wow.
That's the best I can give. If you do that, then anything anybody else does around you will not have an impact, because you'll know that whatever happens, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah. It's your responsibility. And then, the negativity out there, it's your responsibility. You keep listening to it, you keep doing it, you take that responsibility, you can make the change whenever you want.
Right.
You got the choice. Wow.
Exactly.
That is awesome. This has been great, Chaz.
Yeah, man.
So
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So what's next for you now? Now you got the book and everything. What do you see, in your immediate future for you?
Yeah. So the book's out. Finally launched it. I got it up. It's on, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it Barnes and Noble. You can get it anywhere. That's what I have. That's been the most recent push of what I have. I also, for consulting, another thing on my horizon is I'm working with one of Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi's companies as a trainer for them with some of their business coaching and what they have. So that's another avenue that I'm starting to really get a foray into. And for me personally, for my coaching business, the ultimate goal, obviously with, COVID being the way that it is, it prevents the in-person things and all. And, speaking events, I want on the horizon, and I want to set those up for when we can actually have those. But really for me, my goal this year is to have on the books minimum 100 people that have gone through my coaching program by the end of the year. That's awesome. The goal. It's going to be a stretch. It's going to stretch me to make it happen. Yep. It's not a stretch in the sense I can't find them. It's a stretch in the sense of like, how am I going to find the time? Right. But I need to make it happen, because I know if I do that, then that just sets the stage for helping more people next year. So for me, that's the driving goal that I have. I'm already this year. I think I'm like 4 down already.
Nice.
So I'm making progress.
I love it.
But I also, I'm opening up coaching probably within the next week or two when my schedule opens up. So it should fill up, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, man, that's horizon for me.
That's awesome. And we'll put all the links up there too, where people can contact you absolutely for your book link as well. I want to get it in as many hands as we can and help you out. But this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking, the hour here. It just blew by, and I knew it would, because I knew we get into these discussions.
Great energy.
Yeah. I know. I love it. It's just, it's one of those things that I feel like my head's ready to explode in a good way. Because it's like every time I talk, it's like I learn something new. I'm like, wait, that's a good shift, or that's a great strategy. I love it. And I think people are gonna benefit tremendously. So Chaz, thank you so much for joining us. And once COVID kind of lifts, we definitely want to do a lot of this stuff in person. So we'll think of some good stuff. Man.
Absolutely.
Everybody, Chaz Malewski, everybody.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Appreciate it, everybody. What another amazing episode. I truly had a blast with Chaz. I hope you guys learned a lot too. That hour that we just spent together totally went by so fast. It was like we just picked up and started talking like we're old friends again. I haven't actually been in the presence of Chaz probably in some time, a few months. We've connected, we've chatted here and there, but it was great to sit down and have an in-depth conversation with him and talk to him about all he's up to. I mean, he's writing a book. It's out there. We're going to put the link here, and really talk about some of the strategies. And I think you picked up on a lot of cool things that Chaz talked about: how to be successful in business, how to start being a life coach, and how to sort of take that negativity that he had early on when he was approached by people. Remember sitting at that table and put his head down and said, wow, what am I doing here? They're knocking me down. And he had that guy that said, hey, you can do this. And he believed in himself, and he went through with it. And Chaz, as I said, has had a very successful career so far, and he's just getting started. He's still a baby if you think about it. And what I love about Chaz, as I said earlier, is he has a heart of gold. He is so willing to help. But if you notice in the conversation, Chaz listens intently. And I think that's one thing that's missing in society right now, listening more. I mean, Chaz listens deeply. He cares, and then he answers his questions with so much thought and so much information. And I even picked up on just some simple strategies that you can use and implement in life, and how to get out of the zombie mode and how to be more productive. And he said, you got to keep going no matter what. Keep going through, because most of you out there stop. You do 1 or 2 things and think, okay, success is not happening. It's not working. I'm going to stop. And like he and I talked about, you got to keep going. You got to get past the pain. You got to get past the madness. And eventually you'll have that success. And if not, as he said, you're going to learn some things and figure it out. And as I said, the reason I wanted to interview Chaz was Chaz has had this amazing growth success over this last year, just like that. And I just was stunned to see this, the consistency, his approach to building his business, a very successful business. And he's got a book out there right now, which just had its pre-launch, and it's launched. So hats off to Chaz for really, truly taking the bull by the horns, breaking through the fear, breaking through all those things. And just imagine, if you think about this, if he was still at that table, or he left that table thinking, okay, I'm not good enough, that's it, I give up. we would not have the great, amazing person he is helping people. He's helped so many people. I love his goals that he's talking about. Wants to help 100 and some people this year. I think that's an awesome stretch goal, and I just love it about him. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. Put some of these things to good use, and we'll see you on episode 7 next week. Take care, and thanks for watching, everybody.